We'll discuss today a famous Gemara in Yevamos on Daf Mem Zayin Amid Beis regarding the issue of conversion. The Gemara tells us in Krisis that there are three parts to the conversion process: Mila, circumcision; Tevila, immersion in the mikvah; and bringing a karban. So obviously today we don't bring karbanos, and that's the Gemara's discussion in Krisis. But I just want to focus on today the Seder of the Geirus. So the Gemara tells us in Yevamos, it says, Nisrape madvilin oso miyad. First it talks about you discourage the person, and if they're sincere, then immediately you go ahead and you don't delay the Mila, it says. You do the Mila right away, so not to delay the mitzvah. And as soon as the wound from the circumcision heals, then one goes ahead with the tefillah, with the immersion and completing the Geirus process. So the Rishonim are bothered from a common sense logic point of view. The order seems to be out of order. What is the order? The Gemara says Mila and then Tefillah. Mila and then you immerse. The Rishonim ask, would make more sense to first do the Tefillah, the immersion, then do the Mila. So immediately once you finish the Mila, you become Jewish. Here that you're waiting, you do the Mila, it's going to take a couple of days, I guess. Couple of days, couple of hours, couple of weeks to heal, so you can't go into the tefillah. So you're causing it to become a Jew later. Why not first do tefillah and then do milah? That's the kasha of different rishonim. Is one and we'll touch on the question. And is one permitted to switch the order? Can one go ahead and do tefillah before Mila? So that's what we'll see. The Gemara tells us that that's the Rishonim here. So the Rashba and the Ritva answer, they say the Mila must happen first. That we can't change the order. You always first have to do the Mila, and then you have to do the Tefillah. In other words, basically they're saying it's an obstacle. Basically, why do you have to do a Mila? Because you have to remove the arla, the foreskin, the tumas arla, the foreskin that's preventing the tefillah to take effect. They hold it's a prerequisite to do the Mila, to remove the arla, remove the foreskin, and then only afterwards you could do it. So according to the Rashba and the Ritva, that if one did reverse the order, if one first did the tefillah then did the Mila, it wouldn't be good, because it'd be like, to borrow the phrase the Rambam writes in Hilchas Tshuva, but also and the Gemara talks about it by the case of Hechsher Kelam, but the principle is a tovel v'sharetz biyado. You go to the mikvah, but you're still holding the creeping thing, you still have the defiled bug with you. So obviously the immersion is not going to help you. Or as the Ram writes in Hilchas Tshuva, you could be, like for instance, you could be saying Al Chet, I want forgiveness for the sin. Let's say Al Chet shachatana b'lashon hara yivogasa, but then at the next moment you're talking lashon hara. So that's a ketova b'sharetz b'yado. So we see from the Ritva and the Rashba that number one is they see you can't reverse the order. If you reverse the order, it's a no-go. They clearly learned that the Mila is a prerequisite for the Tefillah, and it's a no-go because it's Tova v'sharetz b'yado. And the Ramban disagrees. The Ramban disagrees and says that the order of the conversion is not essential. Of course, the Gemara says first Mila then Tefillah, then that's the preferable way. But if one does Tefillah and then do Mila, it's not a problem. And I said, why did the Gemara suggest Mila first? That's only because Mila is the hard stuff. So again, we're trying to talk the convert out of converting to ensure he's sincere. So let's see if you really mean business. You could talk the talk, but let's see if you're willing to go through with the Mila. So once we see you're serious, you're willing to go through the Mila, so we do the Mila first, then Tefillah. But it's nothing essential to the order. And if the bottom line you do the Tefillah and the Mila, the Ramban says it's a go. And it's not a case of Tovel b'sheretz b'yada. That's kind of like the machokas there in the Gemara about a Zara, Tosis and the Rashbam, and the Gemara seems to say, let's say you buy a treif pot from a non-Jew, so we know you need two things. Number one, you have to kasher it because it's been used for non-kosher, and like anything else, if you buy a kli from a non-Jew, there's a mitzvah of tfilas kelim, of putting it in the mikvah, and that transforms, it's a change of status from a non-Jewish vessel to a Jewish vessel. So the Gemara says first you kasher the vessel, then you tovel it. The Tosis over there in Avodah Zarah says, but it's really lav dafka, it's not a big deal, any order works. You could first tovel it and then treif it. And Tosis says, but why would anyone even think that it wouldn't be an issue? So Tosis doesn't quote the Rashbam, but that's what the Rashbam's Shita is. The Rashbam holds you can't switch the order, because he holds it's a case like we said, Tova v'sheretz b'yado. It's like, how could you tovel the kli at the same time when it still has treif in it? So that machlokas, and it's similar because they're both, well, that's the question if they're similar or not, but it's a case where there's no tumah, you have to be tovel kelim if it wasn't used yet. So we see that's the machlokas over there, the machlokas Ramban, the machlokas in Yevamot between the Ramban versus the Ritva and the Rashba, and the machlokas Tosis and Rashbam, whether the order is likuva, it seems to be on the same issue. According to the Rashbam, it's like doing the Mila, you have to remove the foreskin before the Tefillah could be effective. And so too, over here by kashering before Tefillah, and the Ramban writes, no, that's lav dafka like Tosfos, and therefore any order works. Or you don't have to compare the two cases. But either way, we have a machlokas, the Ramban versus the Rashba and the Ritva, whether one, even though the Gemara says you do Mila first and not Mila and then Tefillah, but logically it should be the reverse. So the Ritva says, and the Ritva says, no, logically it has to be Mila first, because first you have to remove the Arla. And the Ramban says, Echanami, it could be any order. The reason why we do Mila, we just want to know if he's sincere or not. So, connected to this issue, there's a Gemara on Ayin Chesam and Aleph that talks about something very relevant to our discussion. The Gemara discusses the question of a non-Jewish woman is pregnant. So a pregnant Gentile wants to convert. And not only does she wants to, she does. So a Gentile woman who's pregnant goes into the mikvah. So the Gemara says, Bina ein tzricha tefillah. The fetus does not require another immersion. When the baby is born, you don't require a new tefillah pashas to complete his conversion, that he's Jewish, but we'll see what that means exactly. Whether, does that mean, so it's like the kid is born Jewish? Or, because clearly he's going to have to have a circumcision anyway. If he's born Jewish, he has to have a circumcision, because every Jew has to have a circumcision. And if he's a non-Jew, he has to have a circumcision to finish the conversion process. So the Ramban learns this Gemara, we see, the Ramban wants to say, we see from this Gemara, the raya for me, a proof for me, that the order, the sequence is important, as long as you do both. As long as you do tefillah and then milah. As long as you do both, because here, what's happening here, the Ramban writes, first tefillah is happening, when the mother converts. You're not doing the milah until later on. So we see, according to the Ramban, that the tefillah is effective for the male fetus, and he basically is, and his conversion is, the tefillah counts, but his conversion isn't complete until the bris milah. So as he's saying, according to the Ramban, it's mashma that this child isn't Jewish. And that's a major contemporary issue of someone who is conceived from a guy, from a non-Jew, but the birth is from a Jewish mother, yet we see, according to the Ramban, the child is not Jewish. The Ramban learns the conversion process isn't finished until the milah. But what's the Ramban's raya is we see, in this case, first you did the tefillah, then you did the milah, you don't need another tefillah later, so we see that one can reverse the order. That's the opinion of the Ramban. The Rashba, how does he defend his position about the sequence we see from here? Or if you learn that the conversion is being finished by the milah, so how do you explain first they did the tefillah, then the milah? So the Rashba says that when the Gemara says that the mother's tefillah is effective for the fetus, the Rashba's chiddush is only referring to the female fetus, because the whole conversion only involves the tefillah. So therefore, if it's a woman, if it's a female fetus, so then it's good. But in the case he says, if it's a male inside, the mother's tefillah is not affected, because he's sticking to his guns, because you can't have the tefillah before the milah, so the child must undergo tefillah again after the bris, since it's so. He goes to the other extreme, he says he sticks to his guns. In all cases, you need milah and then the tefillah, and therefore it's only good on a female, but on a male it's a no-go because of the order. This is according to the Rashba. The mother's tefillah is not effective for the male fetus. According to the Ramban, it is, and therefore the child must undergo a tefillah after the milah. That's the second shita. And the third shita is the ritva and the ra'ah. The ritva and the ra'ah, the Muki Yosef quotes the ritva, quotes the ra'ah, that since at the time when they went into the mikvah, she was pregnant, so the fetus is in his mother's womb, and therefore obviously when the fetus is in the mother's womb, it's hard to have a bris milah at that time. In fact, it's impossible to have a bris milah. At least we haven't got to that state where you can do a milah while the fetus is still in the mother's womb. And therefore, the Ritva and the Ra'ah say, we treat this like a woman. We treat this fetus like a female fetus. And just like a female fetus, all you need is conversion. Therefore, that's why it's good. So they suggest that the mother's tefillah is effective even for a male fetus, even without the bris, because there's no need in this case to perform a bris for the child's conversion, since he's, of course, according to the Ritva, then, you'd still have to go ahead and do a bris on, the baby still has to go a bris on the 8th day, because like every Jewish child. So it could be, so it's an interesting nafkamina would come out, because according to the Ramban and the Rashba, the child still isn't Jewish. According to the Ramban, he's not Jewish until he does the milah. According to the Rashba, you got to do the Mila and the Tefillah again. But either way, when you do the Mila, it's B'Torah Geiros, not B'Torah Mila. And according to the Ritva and the Ra'ah, you're doing the Mila L'Shem Mitzvah Mila. Tremendous nafkamina. The practical difference would be when you do the Mila. According to the Ritva and the Ra'ah, you definitely have to do it on day 8, but according to the Ramban and the Rashba, perhaps you don't. You can just do it day 1 because it's not a Mila for the sake of mitzvah Mila, it's for the sake of Ger. That's a separate issue we'll have to get into. There's another Ramban that perhaps, anyway, a Mila b'di'evet, a Mila l'shem mitzvah would work. L'shem Geritz as well. That's a whole discussion, what happened with Shevet Levi, because Shevet Levi already had, but the Jewish people did a Mila by the Karban Pesach l'shem Geritz. But Shevet Levi already did the Mila beforehand, so did they have to do anything at the conversion? So either some might suggest they had to do a hatafis dam bris, they had to take some blood out, or others say no, that there one day in the Ramban that the Mila l'shem Geirus, the Mila l'shem mitzvah counted l'shem Geirus. That's why it's good for them all to know that when a child, you're not so sure about whether the child is Jewish or not, always have in mind that when you're doing the Mila l'shem mitzvah, it also might go on the Geirus. But that's this is a fundamental issue. So what the Gemara tells us, we know we need Mila and Tefillah. There has to be circumcision and Tefillah, and according to some Rishonim specifically, it has to be in that order. And if it's not, and according to the Ramban, it's with halach l'maisa. How do we pass him? Well, it's 2 days. Ramah quotes 2 days. Therefore, out suffix, the minhag is one would have to do another tefillah, because you don't want to be, it'd be according to many Rishonim, you wouldn't be Jewish. If not, so the minhag is one should be machmir, and after they do a milah, in general, that if one did the milah before, in general case, if one did the milah, if one did the tefillah before the milah, they should go ahead and do another tefillah misaf. The Gemara tells us in Krisus, on Daf Tes, Ger Bizman Hazeh, that the Gemara talks about increases. How does a non-Jew become a Jew? How does this conversion process work? So the Gemara tells us we look to Har Sinai. We look to Har Sinai, how the Jews became Gerim. That's how everyone else becomes Gerim. So therefore, whether the Jews, the Gemara goes through all the details we're not going to go into now. How the Gemara proves they did Mila before, they did Mila before the Karban Pesach, they did Tefillah before Har Sinai, and they brought Karbanos. So that's what the Gemara says over there. You require Mila, Tefillah, and Karbanos. And so the question is then, to maybe today we can't have converts, because since today we don't have Karbanos, we don't bring Karbanos, just like if you don't do tefillah, if you don't do immersion, you're not Jewish. So too, maybe if you don't do a karban, so that's a shayibam bisman hagamara in terms of if you didn't bring a karban, were you Jewish or not? But let's assume all three are prerequisites. So how could we accept Gerim today? So that's what the Gemara says based on the pasuk Udoro Sechem. That today, since we see regarding by a ger, it says when bringing it says the pasuk Udoro Sechem, and therefore we learn out that all future generations can become Gerim, and therefore if Karbanos are not possible, we no longer have to bring Karbanos. So therefore we knock out the Karbanos, and today we only need Mila Tefillah, and we'll see, we'll get into another time. We need a Beis Din, we need a Kabbalah mitzvahs, but let's focus on the Gemara. The Gemara says that Bisman Hazeh, a ger doesn't have to bring a Karban, because it says Gedoro Sechem. So even though we learn out that a ger doesn't have to bring a Karban today, yet the Gemara tells us that someone who converts, they still have to designate money. They have to put aside money for a korban. So when the Beis HaMikdash will be rebuilt, and then they'll actually have to bring one. So Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai comes along and he said he discontinued the practice of people designating money now, because why the concern was you'll designate money, you'll forget this money is for a korban, and you'll end up using it on your personal use and to be moel behektish. So therefore, Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai suspended the takana that a ger should not put away money now for a korban. However, even though Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai decreed not to put money away now, nevertheless, the Rambam rules, and this is the way we paskin, that all the gerim, anyone who converted after destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, they'll be obligated to bring a korban. When the Beis HaMikdash is going to be rebuilt, it's going to be packed, because I think the women who had children, they have to bring a gerim. So the first couple of days, there'll be a nice overflow crowd. So even though Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said not to designate the money, but he wasn't changing the rule. The rule remains that when the Beis HaMikdash gets rebuilt, a ger will still have to bring a korban. And so as the Gemara says in Krisus and Avches Beis on 8b, that Gemara says that ger may not eat from the karbanos, from the kachim, or perhaps even marry a bas Yisrael, because prior to bringing the korban, that's what the Gemara says, that prior to bringing the korban, a ger must no longer bring a korban. Until a ger brings a korban, he can't marry a bas Yisrael and he can't eat kachim. So the Avnei Nezer raises the shaila whether a ger bisman hazeh who converts, what will happen when the Beis HaMikdash is rebuilt? Could he eat kachim right away, or will he be prohibited to eat kachim once the Beis HaMikdash is rebuilt until he brings the korban? So the Avnei Nezer concludes, he says, from the fact that today a ger can marry a Jew, this with Mila and Tefillah, therefore we see that to Mila and Tefillah, or for a woman just Tefillah, it achieves a complete conversion and he's permitted to eat the kachim as well. So too the Avnei Nezer says that when the Beis HaMikdash will be rebuilt and a ger will be permitted to eat kachim even before he brings the korban, although he agrees that he will have a mitzvah to bring a korban, nevertheless it doesn't affect his status as Yisrael, and he could continue eating kachim and marry Yisrael before then. The Zeicher Yitzchak writes that it's mashra from Tosfos the opposite. That Tosfos indicates that when the Beis HaMikdash will be rebuilt, the gerim will have to bring a korban in order to complete the conversion process. And he says, not only will they be prohibited from eating kachim before they bring the korban, they'll even be prohibited from marrying a bas Yisrael. It's a further discussion on whether someone who is already married will have to separate from the spouse in the Achronim, but we assume not. Even though a ger who converts in present times, the Zeicher Yitzchak writes, he's permitted now to marry a bas Yisrael, but he won't have permission when the Beis HaMikdash will be built until he brings the korban. That's a major dispute among the Achronim. So let's summarize. So you need, for the different parts of the process, you need Mila, Tefillah, and the korban. So Bisman Hazeh, obviously you can't bring a korban, so therefore how could you become a ger? So the Gemara says, Gedara Seichem, it applies even Bisman Hazeh. Even during that, you could become a ger even without bringing karbanos. So the Gemara points out, even though you don't bring karbanos now, but Bisman Beis HaMikdash is rebuilt, you'll be obligated to bring a korban and you had to actually designate money now to put it away. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai took away that takana because people were using the money for the wrong things. But however, though, but it's still codified by the Rambam that a ger will have to bring a karba when the Beis HaMikdash is rebuilt. So, since the Gemara tells us in Kriyas Tav Ches Amud Beis that before a ger brings a karban, he can't eat kachim, he can't marry a Bat Yisrael. So the Avnei Nezer raises the question that someone who converted now during the Churban Habayis, what about when the Beis HaMikdash will be rebuilt? Will he be able to eat kachim right away? So the Avnei Nezer says yes, because we see today Mila and Tefillah makes you a full Jew, because we see you can marry a Bat Yisrael. And in fact, you can marry a Bat Yisrael, and therefore he says you'll still have a mitzvah to bring a karban, but it's not liikuva, and you can still marry a Bat Yisrael and eat kachim. The Zecher Yitzchak writes no. He says based on Tosfos that until once the Beis HaMikdash is rebuilt, it will be revoked. You cannot marry a Bat Yisrael. Whether he takes it so far, you have to get a divorce, and that's a separate discussion. But you can't. Maybe you'll say either you're on the grandfather clause, the Kaivan Ish once it was permitted. But now, anyway, it says a ger cannot marry a Bat Yisrael until he brings a karban as well, and he definitely can't eat the kachim until he actually brings the karban. So as I mentioned, the Beis HaMikdash will be a little crowded in the beginning from all the gerim and all the women bringing karbanos.